Okay, hi everyone. So I hope you can hear me well and you can see me well. I changed my device, so I'm not quite sure how the video will turn out. Anyways, I was not posting anything for 5 days, mainly because of my lab work. So I'm currently doing biochemistry lab work. Very extensive, takes a lot of time. I'm not even quite sure what I'm essentially doing for 90% of the time, but I'm doing it. That's important. Anyways, today's topic is not my struggle in biochem. It is about us losing our ability to think like a genius. It sounds weird to maybe say that every one of us was a genius at a certain point, but it is certainly true if you measure it for certain skills and attributes that you're looking for. And I came across a study, which I did read 3 to 4 months ago, which is concerned about finding essentially potential in kids and figuring out based on the potential that you saw whether they'll be successful or not. And the study was done by NASA, whatever, the National Space Agency. And what they were trying to do is to find talented engineers in the 1960s. And they thought, well, how can we, find talent at the earliest point? And they were thinking about, kids, and they thought, well, how can you figure out how kids think and which one of them will be geniuses later on, which we can recruit. It's a bold assumption to say, well, if you are a genius while you're a kid, that NASA will recruit you, but they had a similar thought in mind. So they sent out, I think, a psychiatrist. I'm not even quite sure what he was, but I remember the name. The name is George Land, and essentially what he went on to do is to do a study with around 1,500 kids and show them certain riddles, certain problems that they need to solve in multiple ways. And he called it the critical thinking assessment. And the goal was to see, well, with how many solutions you can come up with for, any kind of problem. And he found out that for the ages of 3 to 5, 89% of kids qualified as geniuses according to the critical thinking assessment. That is, they found out so many ways to tackle a problem that they were considered to be a genius. I'm not quite sure how many ways or solutions they had to present for each problem or what the average is to be in the genius category, but they were in the genius category. Now he went on to study the same kids after 5 years. So when they were around 10, turns out only 30% still qualify for the genius level. At age 15, it's only 12%, and when they reach adulthood, it's only 2%. Now, what happened? Because according to this study, you were a genius, you lost a genius. And what, he attributes this issue to is essentially the school system, which is probably your first thought. Because when you go into school, they require you to only think of one possible solution, starting with grade one and up until you get your high school diploma. There's never really room for experimentation, for issues or problems in any kind of way, even when your teachers try to encourage you. There is not the freedom to experiment. And I feel like if you want to have, you know, more scientific breakthroughs like the Apollo mission, you'd want to look at this study because NASA was also looking at the study and they were figuring out, well, that is weird, right? Because we need these engineers and these folks to be able to put people maybe on Mars or, do pretty cool missions that we might be planning in 50 years. They didn't do that. And we didn't send anybody to the moon for the last 50 years, right? And so this study essentially shows you the issue that why we are not able to do things. It is because we're losing our innate ability to think in a creative way. And I think there was a quote by Picasso Um, it goes something like this. Like I'm not quite sure, but you can look it up. You'll find it. It goes something like, um, it took me 4 years to learn like Raphael, another painter and artist, but it took me a lifetime to study how to draw like a child. And I also think that another additional quote, which is like which fits the topic as well, also comes from him, which is every kid is an artist until they stop to be an artist. That's essentially what the study is all about. Because if you think about creative thinking assessment or about the way you come up with solutions, it's probably interdisciplinary in every way that you can think of. And essentially, you're putting kids into a path and tell them there's only one right way to solve this issue. No wonder we are losing the sparks between various topics that could come together to solve an issue. And I feel like even in my degree, or even if you're studying at university, you'll see it as well, right? Like they'll tell you, oh, you can choose different modules and lectures to broaden your knowledge. But at the very end, you are taking certain topics without correlation, or like, or better, you have forgotten to see the correlation with each other. So you're essentially alone learning stuff, which is supposed to help you think critically, but because you have unlearned this thinking where you can establish patterns, which you were able to do as a kid pretty easily, you are now being left alone with a lot of information without you having a thought process that could produce a solution or multiple solutions to any given problem. Yeah. And I mean, it is depressing, I won't lie. But I was also looking at an article, because I was like, well, if we have this issue, how can we combat the issue? And there seems to be a pretty straightforward answer to that, which is Socratic thinking, or like the Socratic method. If you are not familiar with that, it is essentially where, so there is an ancient philosopher called Socrates, and what he established was essentially critical thinking. So he went on to have dialogues with people, and he would question them about things that we take for granted, right? Like, what is justice? What is beauty? What is virtue? What are these things that we kind of think as a given? And he asks us about that. So he's always following up with why. He's using the anchor method. So he's using your last argument, presenting it as a question, and you run out of answers. Now, apparently, if you use the Socratic method, so this wasn't really proven by any study yet, which I found, you should be able to regain at least a bit of the critical thinking and the creative thinking that you had as a kid that you lost because you're asking these why questions. They're pretty easy because you're just searching for the next reason for an issue that could have been caused. If you take, I don't know, the environmental crisis, climate change, within 5 questions, you can identify one issue that you can solve. And if you ask more why questions, you probably end up with solutions that, could help you solve the issue. Yeah. And that's it. I feel like I rambled quite a lot. Um, and I am a bit tired, but I felt like the study was pretty cool. But again, I might have talked too much, waffled too much. But I feel like the study is very clear. There's not a lot to be confused about. And I do have a visual summary down below. And for today, that's it. By the way, if you stick this far, thank you. I do appreciate it. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to, or, give me some advice on, what else to talk about in that direction, because I feel like that's what interests me. Like system thing, like how do you call it? Systems thinking or thinking in systems, um, which is so important nowadays because you have so much information out there, but you cannot really categorize how you think about certain information and how you put them together. And if you have any recommendations on books, maybe on articles, on methods, feel free to comment down below. And apart from that, thank you for watching and